Hello and welcome back to the Greensboro College Analytics live stream. So we've got a very special episode. So I've got a returning guest. So Danny Lauer is going to be coming on, and he's going to talk about his career journey with my current student, Cole, who is a little atypical for the student body here at Greensboro College in that he went into the military and now is transitioning. He's a little bit older, and I think that having Cole talk to Danny would be a perfect kind of conversation for us to unpack quite a bit in terms of just navigating your career in analytics. I'm going to go ahead and pull Danny. How are you doing?
Doing great. How are you doing, man?
I'm hanging in there. And then there's Cole. So
hey, how's it going?
I think we've set the stage. So Danny, why don't you just kind of reintroduce yourself to some of the audience, but some people who are new. So what's been going on in your world?
So, my name's Danny Lauer. Work for Amazon. I'm a senior product manager here, working on our automated inventory management systems for all of our global expansion markets. So, Australia, Singapore, UAE, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, and now Egypt. So, light touch stuff. But yeah. Doing that, and then as I was kind of alluding to John David, I can't really talk a ton about it, but have some new stuff kind of in the works here that nice. Hopefully will be sending me abroad here in the new year, which is so thankful because I'm sure like everybody's a little bit cooped up with COVID, so
That's
to
true.
be able to get out and run around again will be quite nice.
Delightful. All right, Cole. I feel like let's introduce you more. So kind of where are you at right now and what are your future goals?
Where I'm at right now is I'm a junior at Greensboro College, finishing up junior year, looking to start my senior year in the spring, business and economics major, and then doing the minor that is a fresh offering here at Greensboro College of the business analytics. And so one of those classes is with Professor Ariansen, where we go over case studies and real world use
Don't laugh at that. he's laughing at the professor
of some of these analytics skills that he's been teaching us, Power BI and most recently Tableau.
Yeah. So Danny, you've been on and you critiqued Hunter Brown, who was one of my former students, actually at High Point University. So I got him.
Yeah.
I got him as a sophomore. So he was young, I hired him as an intern over the summer, and now he is actually managing a really large consulting project for me. So he is, you gave him some good criticism on his dashboard. We're going to have a completely different, I can actually preview the dashboard because Cole, you just sent me a link to it. So it's a completely different use case. And this one's dealing with marketing data as opposed to, I think, Danny, the one that you did was sales oriented.
Yeah.
So we don't have to jump into this right now, but here's kind of the portfolio piece that he is working on. So instead of, doing the typical college class thing where it's you have a final and you have to cram and study, I'm grading them on their portfolio. So form and function, which is kind of a similar rubric for how I graded Hunter's portfolio. But all right. So Cole, you had some questions for Danny. Do you want to go ahead and you can kind of take over from here?
Yes. First thing I wanted to know is, after looking at your profile, I wanted to know if you could tell us about your whole journey, career wise. You've got some impressive leaps there from different careers, and that's something I'm interested in.
Yeah. So, and kind of to get everybody else out there kind of up to speed, if you haven't stalked me on LinkedIn. So graduated from University of Washington, 2007. Issue that I'm sure a lot of you remember is we had that lovely little recession that happened about that time. So finding roles were not easy. So I actually ended up moving back to my hometown and became a funeral director and embalmer for about 2.5 years. And the main reason behind that was one, to kind of give back to my community a little bit. But the other part was I wanted to start learning about what it took to run a small business. And that's kind of how I justified that stop in my life, is that I kind of knew in my heart of hearts at that point I didn't want to do that for a living, but I needed to find a reason to be there and a reason to kind of stick it out. So did that for about 2.5 years, and then kind of decided this wasn't where my journey was and I needed to do a little bit more, but I wasn't quite ready to make a jump towards anything. So I decided to move to Portland, where I became a all-star cheerleading coach, won a couple titles there, and then also joined the stunt team, or lack of a better word, I was a professional cheerleader for the Portland Trailblazers. So I threw small people around. But yeah, no, it was a ton of fun. Got to be in front of thousands and thousands of people. You learn stress management, presentation probably better than you can ever learn in one hell of a hurry. I never get nervous in front of people anymore. Actually, I'm more nervous in front of small crowds than I am in front of thousands and thousands these days. But from there, was able to start networking. And it's when I kind of really started to learn networking, after somebody told me you've got this kind of platform, you're talking to all these people, start using this for your own benefit. And I ended up chatting with somebody who offered me, even though it was a temp role at that time, it was a facilities and fleet management role for state of Oregon for Child Protective Services. So I was able to actually go in and start flexing some of these muscles I always knew I had, but I didn't have it on paper. And that's where my big struggle was, is I was having a hard time breaking into any corporate jobs or anything that I really wanted to do, is because my resume, my piece of paper, didn't match what I felt my actual skill set lay. And then after a lot of long conversations, I ended up going to Wake Forest to go get my MBA to really start shoring things up. And while I was there, I tried to make the most of it. So joined a group called Project Nicaragua that goes down to Managua, Nicaragua, and does small business consulting and teaches business classes to locals down there. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, I went down there 3 separate times. It was an absolute blast. Then, did an internship there with product management for endoscopic medical devices. Then coming out of there, got my first kind of big break from an alumni who kind of recognized that I was good with analytics.
You're rushing through a really big point. You met me while you were in North Carolina.
Oh yeah. Well, I haven't gotten to that part of the story yet. I haven't met you yet.
Oh,
I met you after I graduated.
Oh, that's true.
Quit trying.
Sorry. I got.
John David just wants to know the part where he's in.
Yeah, that's right. Because you were working at the aerospace place, right?
Yeah, I was working at BE already by the time we met. But yeah, ended up going to work as a strategic supply chain planning manager for an aerospace firm, and really was able to use my abilities in analytics and Excel to kind of digitalize and automate a lot of things to make life easy. While I was there, I met John David, and we ended up meeting kind of the exact reason I met some other people is through a mutual friend of ours, and he reached out saying, "Hey, I want to get my MBA. Is this worth it? Can I buy you a cup of coffee and talk about it?" And so we did that. We ended up becoming pretty good friends, and have casually stalked each other over the years here. Even so much that I tried to poach him to come work on my team here about 6-8 months ago.
Yeah.
But yeah. But then from there, kind of knew I wanted to come back to Seattle. I wanted to work for a big major company. Was able to get on with Amazon, and now I've worked 3 separate rotations at Amazon. I've done in-stock management for toys. I've done in-stock management for Amazon devices in Australia, where I was the very first one to do that. I kind of went down there, set up shop. And now I do product management for inventory outcomes for our expansion markets. So kind of the abbreviated but extremely long-winded path that I've kind of taken so far.
I think there's so many things there, though, that we could kind of unpack. Cool, because I think we talked about one thing that I think a lot of people struggle with is imposter syndrome. So going from that funeral position to your first manager title, was there a struggle there for you? Like, how did you deal with that? Because it's almost like I've heard someone reframe imposter syndrome as your self-image is not currently caught up with where you are in life. So you're just like framing up yourself wrong. Like how did that transition go? Was it smooth, or did you have to work through some of these issues?
I definitely had to work through some of the issues because, again, before I got to that point, I think I tried what a lot of undergrads do is you try to talk to these companies, and I did a lot of things wrong. I think I even explained to you in the last time I was on here is I messed up all over the place. And so I was talking to these major companies thinking, oh yeah, I'm a very smart, very capable person. Sure, my resume doesn't really match it, but I know I'm smart. I can talk to people. And then you just get, for lack of better words, you get absolutely roasted sometimes. To give you an idea, the first time I interviewed with Amazon, my interviewer said that it was a place for smart people, and some people, maybe like yourself, won't get along well here.
Wow.
So
I didn't know that.
Well, believe me, we've now met, and yeah, he has since apologized. So it works out really well. But I had a lot of these conversations of, what are you even doing here? You don't belong. So kind of going into that role, it was a mixture of two things. One, there was this hunger that I had to prove that I could do it. But again, I questioned every single thing that I did of being like, oh my gosh, I had this almost belief that maybe I really was this thing that all these recruiters and everybody had told me that I really wasn't going to measure up. And so like I questioned almost every single thing that I did. And it's really where I started learning the importance of mentors and getting mentors. And it's the number one thing I talk about, is because if it wasn't for my mentors through that, I would have never made it through. I would have never went to grad school. And it was my mentors that really were like, no, you're doing the right stuff. You got to, like when I wanted to run, they told me to hold on. You got to learn how to crawl first, then walk, and kind of really help guide me through a lot of this because, coming through even undergrad, especially in the early 2000s, it was, well, yeah, you go to undergrad, you graduate, you just get a job. That's just how it works. And nobody really goes through the intricacies of how you manage, your personal brand, your portfolios, your image, how you even truly structure a resume correctly to truly highlight everything that you do. None of that stuff was really taught at that point. And so it took a lot of time and a lot of patience with a lot of amazing folks that I still to this day can't thank enough, that have kind of got me to that point and got me over some of that initial imposter syndrome, which I will unfortunately say never really leaves. Because even the further I go, the more I kind of look that I am I come from a small backwoods town. I'm a backwoods hillbilly who has now kind of found his way working through corporate America. And I'm like, I don't know if I belong here. I'm working with people who went to Harvard and Yale and MIT. And like, I went to Cedar Woolley High School. Awesome.
Definitely a lot of good info there.
Cool. What's you have?
What's that?
Another. So I think didn't you write down a question about grad school?
Yeah, I did. I had a question. You were talking about you had a guy you had coffee with asking about grad school. I want to know, like, not only is it worth it or not, is there a good time to go? Like, should you try to go right after undergrad, or maybe work a little bit and then go, or even what type of master's you're going for?
So I would really say that all depends on each individual circumstance. And I think when I sat down with John David here, it was more of I got to know him. And I think that's why we ended up becoming friends, is because in order to truly answer that question, you've got to know the other person, and you've got to kind of know yourself in like, what are you looking to achieve? What are you looking to do? What's your future vision for yourself?
Danny, do you want to root down on me specifically? Isn't it like, so you can use me as a conduit to like work through like what might be a good sign, a green flag or a red flag. So do you remember specifically where I was at? I mean, this was like a decade ago.
Yeah, I do.
So
love you to death, but I don't remember.
So I had gotten a degree from UNCW, so University of North Carolina, Wilmington, in economics. Then I had sold insurance for 3 years. And I had just at that time, I had a client that accounted for like 80% of my income. They decided to go in a different direction, and that got completely nipped. And I had a little bit of a renewal built up, so I could like kind of float for a few months. And then that's when I reached out to you of like, hey, I hate this sales thing, because it was a 100% sales commission job. And I'm thinking about, so at the time I was living on Mayflower Drive, which was a block away from University of North Carolina, Greensboro's business school. So I didn't even have to move. I could just walk 2 blocks to the business school. And they had just launched an MBA with a concentration in analytics. So that's what I was asking your advice on, is like, is this a good path for me to pivot into?
Yeah, and I think the important thing with John David here, and I think it's the reason why I think I actually recommended that you should pursue, is that John David had already been out in the world a little bit, and he knew exactly what he wanted to do. He knew where he wanted to go. He had kind of done his research, and then it was kind of, should I do it? And especially when you come out of, let's call them non-traditional backgrounds. You come out of the military. I came out of cheerleading, mortician work. John David out of insurance. Sometimes you kind of need that fancy piece of paper that helps pivot you. But again, not always. I'm like right now, and it all depends on how the market trends are going.
I would say that like having that piece of paper also kind of thwarts a lot of imposter syndrome. I never really thought about it. I never really thought about that as a tool to like get over your own self-perception. But getting that degree, all of a sudden I felt like I could walk into a room, and I mean, that's what I did. Like I launched my independent consulting agency right out of my master's program. And I was talking to like business owners on how they should use their data to drive their decision-making process. I'm not sure if I would have had that confidence if I had no formal training in that. No. So sometimes you just gotta, if you know what you're talking about a little bit, it helps. And especially if you've had some practice doing it. But the important thing is what's the motivation? What is your motivation to go? If your motivation is to make more money, or because I should have a degree, I will tell you, not now. Don't do it. Take some time. It is a little bit like, it's one of the things that even though I look back at my career and go, oh man, if I would have just started all of this so much earlier, it would have been, I could have had X amount more money. I could have had X amount more. And then I think about it, I'm like, no, not really. Because when I was 22 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to really do in life. And if you would have said analytics, I would have probably been, nah. I think it took me a little bit of time to be out in the real world and in the business world to kind of get an idea of, what it is that I really want to do, what I was passionate about. And again, that came through lots of conversations with mentors and just kind of digging into my own work and finding, what's going to make me happy each morning? What's going to get me excited to wake up for the next 45 years and go to work or go do whatever it is that I'm doing? So that's really what I would look at. And then the other thing you have to look at is financially. For me, I did a full ROI calculation on, how much I was going to spend, because
most of you guys are from Greensboro area, unless you're watching this online from somewhere else. But Wake Forest is not a cheap school. I think it required me to take $135,000 out for 2 years.
Wow. Okay, so this is an interesting price point. You know what? My MBA at UNCG, this was back, man, I'm starting to get old. This was like 5-6 years ago. I paid $24,000 for my MBA.
Yeah.
But I will say this, though. UNCG's brand recognition is only regional. Wake Forest, I think, actually, can you validate or just invalidate that? Like, is that globally recognized? Is it nationally recognized? Like, what's the return on investment from that perspective?
Pretty good. Globally, not so much, but nationwide, yeah. I say I went to Wake Forest. Lots of people recognize it, and they instantly go, "Oh, you must be really smart."
Okay, that's valuable.
Yeah, no, it's super valuable. And then, that kind of then helps catapult you globally, because then once you get onto the global stage, nobody, unless you went to like MIT, Yale, or Harvard, people really start caring where you went to school.
Right.
Because at that point you have enough behind you. Really, that what school you went to matters for two things: your first and second job, and any further networking that you do. That's really where your schools truly, truly matter.
Yeah, I've heard you kind of,
at least in my experience,
you kind of buy into a network. So it's almost like joining a fraternity or a sorority or something like that. Like you can walk into a room maybe somewhere in Chicago, and it's like, oh, you're from Wake Forest. You have an instant connection. So it's like for example, like I didn't go to Wake Forest, but I am connected to them somewhat. Was Sharon Vogler there? Was she your advisor? So she's been on the.
She wasn't my personal advisor, but she was an advisor there.
Right, but this is kind of like a nuanced networking point. The fact that we know someone in common, like if we were completely meeting in Chicago in some networking event, all of a sudden you're not an unknown quantity. Like you know someone that I know, so we kind of feel like there's at least a little baseline of trust versus some unknown entity.
Exactly. And it's really a lot about trust. And I think we even discussed that on the last one, is especially if I'm talking to you in like either a networking or anything like that, it's can I trust you? Are you going to be a hard worker? Are you going to fulfill your end of any bargain? Because a lot of times if we're networking, we're talking about work, we're talking about projects, we're talking about things like that. And what I like to do is I like to collect people in my kind of circle that are just as smart, if not smarter than me. Actually, I prefer them to be smarter than me, more driven than me, or at least on that trajectory up. That if I can give you a hand to get you ahead of me, that actually is extremely beneficial to me, is because if you go out and run off and go do really, really great things, then I can talk to you. You can then give me another hand up, and it kind of is this perpetuating positive feedback cycle that you can develop with your network.
I think that's an interesting perspective on that, because it's that old adage: a rising tide raises all ships.
Yep.
So I mean, I kind of feel that way within like in the entrepreneurship scene here in Greensboro, where like my close friends, if what's good for them is good for me. Like I don't feel. I think a lot of people would get jealous of someone else's success, where I'm like, no, I want you to succeed as much as possible.
Exactly.
One thing that I wanted to also highlight or bring up is that, Cole, you're kind of somewhat on the fence right now, where you're like, I know I want to do something business oriented, maybe business law, maybe analytics. From what I've heard, there is an oversaturation of lawyers out in the workplace. So like you might spend $200,000 and get a $50,000 a year entry level job. Did you do much, like you said you did a lot of research for your MBA. Did you do like any research into like supply and demand out there?
Yeah. And actually it's kind of the nice thing, especially if you look into a lot of MBAs and programs, any of the ones that are worth their salt will keep a lot of their stats up. And that's kind of how I was able to make a lot of my investment decisions, is because I did know for Wake Forest in the year that I came, so the graduating class I think would be 2010. They had a 93% employment placement within 3 months. Average income was, I think, 90K, and then a couple other things. So mainly what I'm getting an idea of is, okay, this is the kind of the salary I can expect. Here's a percentage chance that I actually have to getting a job. Okay, and I'll be very honest, I was making 32K a year at that point. So I'm like, okay, if I'm making 32K a year, I'm going to be missing out on 2 years of income because I went to the full time, I didn't work. So, all right, right there, that's, 64K of lost revenue. Project that, there is a couple percent raise, blah, 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 blah. Then you take that 93% chance and then extrapolate out your possible 90K. And I pretty much did a 10-year horizon on would I be ROI positive or negative after 10 years.
You are such an analyst. I mean,
yeah.
No one does this, by the way. I feel like I would say the majority of people who are signing up for grad school, it's like they can't see past next Wednesday. They're like, what's in it right now? To where I really, really appreciate your methodical, analytical frame on how you made this decision.
Yeah, no, and again, it's because when I was first starting to talk about this, especially with my mentor, they were asking me these questions of, well, what do you want to get out of it? What are you going to get out of it? What's the chances you're going to get? And so I am somebody who really hates sitting there looking like a deer in headlights, being like, I don't know, but I'm also not going to, BS you. So I went through and really dug in deep. And especially if I'm going to drop, 6 figures on an education, I'm going to make damn sure that I'm getting exactly what I want.
Such an investment right there. Because it's not only 6 figures, well, it's 6 figures plus the 64K of you were missing out.
Exactly.
I mean, that is, I feel like people don't take the weight of that huge monumental decision. And also too, I think something I've noticed is that a lot of people are graduating with zero skill set. When I got a degree in economics as an undergrad, and I had 0 skills. So I had to go and sell insurance, which was, I mean, honestly, I'm really grateful for that experience because it was almost like boot camp. Like it broke me down completely. Like being rejected 20, 25 times a day, like knocking door to door, trying to sell some insurance like that was completely broke down any like ego I had. Unlike my, I don't know, these, see, I suffer with the opposite. I don't have imposter syndrome. I have delusions of grandeur where I'm like, of course it's going to work out. I'm going to do this. It's going to be the best thing ever. And that moment completely just reframed things. It's like, oh, things aren't easy. Things are not given to you. You're going to have to be uncomfortable and push through it sometimes.
Well, and I think you raise a very interesting point that I saw a lot of when I was even going to school, and I see even with other grad students that I interview here at Amazon is, I think it's because I came from a non-traditional background. That while I was in grad school, I tried to get into everything I could. It's why I ended up in Project Nicaragua. It's because, okay, now I've got this piece of paper that's going to say I can do it. What else can I do to bolster my chances? Because again, I come from a relatively, lower middle class family at the time. And I knew that there was going to be no financial help from them, that this was all me and that this is a gamble that I was taking. And so I tried to do everything that I physically could to build up as many skills as I could while in grad school. When I had that time to just dedicate my focus to it. And and exactly that. I built up as many skills as possible, tried to diversify myself as much as possible. That way, when I could come out, I could say, not only here, look, I did it in a university setting, but here are the instances where I was actually doing it in live settings while I was here. So it's kind of that almost like the STAR method that we were talking about that I like to put, I was taught to put an extra R at the end. Situation, task, action, result, and then that's second R is how is it repeatable? How can you repeat that, what you did there in a real life work setting? And sometimes bridging what you did in uni versus what you can do in a corporate environment or a work environment sometimes can get a little bit muddled. So if you can have almost a quasi work, quasi university thing that starts bridging that gap, that's why I really love your guys' portfolio ideas. You're starting to kind of build those skills, build those gaps, and actually show how these skills that you have can be repeatable in the workplace.
Yeah, and well, Cole, I don't think I told you like my last internship story in my MBA program, have I? Have I told you the story how I turned my last internship into my first consulting client? So it goes exactly into what you're like, that second R of like, I mean, this was totally crafty, and this was like my skill set of doing sales and like just asking and kind of like being a little bit bold. I took I interned for 2 semesters at a $12 billion company just to have the name brand recognition, and I hated it. So what I did was I took a internship with a much smaller company, so they're like doing about 250 million in revenue, and I was working directly with the president. But here's like the kind of twist is that it was designed for someone who was like a sophomore or junior in undergrad, and I showed up to that interview with an alternate proposal. It's like, instead of saying, hey, the initial scope was you're going to build out a line review manually in Excel. What I pitched the president was, I'm going to build you a system so that we can capture all this data, do some ETL, so combine it all, and then you'll have a dashboard, and all you have to do is update the underlying data structure. So that's that systems versus I could manually do it in Excel, and it would take a ton of time, and it would also be, at risk of human error, to where I just had an email with that client. I mean, it's been 6 years, and I'm managing their whole analytics infrastructure to this day. So like that concept of systems thinking versus ad hoc, I think is huge. And they didn't really talk about that much. Did they talk about that in school?
Nope.
I think that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's, again, that came out of, again, me being terrified of failure and trying to close as many gaps in my resume as humanly possible, is pretty much how I ended up in that. And now it's exactly now what I share with everybody is because it was massively successful for me.
So you had some anxiety kind of around your personal brand. I mean, I feel like, when did personal branding actually come top of mind to you? I'm kind of curious.
Gosh, it became top of mind once, again, I think it was the amount of people that like I got really negative receptions with. Like I think I have probably one of the hardest. No, well, actually it was at BE I started actually working towards it. I remember the exact moment where I went, I got to actually take this extremely seriously, because I had been I was able to get into Wake Forest on this, hey, I've got this really kind of crazy and quirky background, but look at me, I crushed my GMATs. I'm actually very intelligent. That was enough to get me there. Then when I was applying for roles, even while I was in grad school, I really started learning, oh man, I got to really polish up my personal brand after I had literally a hiring manager, while we were in the interview, crumple up my resume, throw it in the bin, and reprimand me for 30 minutes for even applying with that resume.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm not too proud. I went in my car and I think I cried for 30 minutes and then kind of brushed it off and went, all right, we're going to fix everything and this is never going to happen again. What do I need to do this?
I like that gumption.
And then once I got to BE, it's like, okay, how do I really start cultivating this brand, this idea of who I am, who you're going to get, and that way this never happens again. And luckily for me, for the most part, it really hasn't, to that kind of magnitude. You still every so often get kind of a interesting recruiter here and there, but yeah, it was really at BE I started polishing it, and once I kind of found that niche, which I think is hard to discover while you're in undergrad, of what you're actually good at, what your like kind of your shtick is. And because if you go in there and you're like, I'm really good at Tableau and Excel, and that's it, you're going to get blown out of the water because you and about 1.5 billion people are also good at that. You have to have other stuff behind your hard skills. You have to have the soft skills. You've got to be personable. You've got to have the interesting background. And so I had the interesting background down in spades. I just then didn't have that front piece, which is generally the opposite problem for a lot of people. And then Cole, I think you're kind of in the same boat with me on that one, is that you already have that really interesting background. You came from the military background. You'll have a lot to kind of talk about that. Then the next piece is, what is that skill set you want to push forward? Is it going to be inventory optimization, supply chain? I don't know if you did that at all in the military. We got a lot of folks here at Amazon who do that, because the armed forces do supply chain probably better than about anybody in the world does. But then, or is it, hey, I've got all this background, but I've always wanted to go into analytics or marketing, and kind of that reason why. I think it's having that cool personality and that big, that kind of centerpiece skill set, and then the bridge between the two of why.
So I would call that a brand stack. Yeah. Okay, sorry, I thought you were done.
Oh no, you're right. You know all the fancier words than I do.
Well, I mean, it's just this has become my this is what I have developed a whole framework around this. I'm kind of curious, all right, if you think of it as a stack, here is my unique story, here's the hard skills, here's blah 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 blah. What would you say are the core elements of that?
Of being able to have that kind of. Yeah, I would say.
I would say into an interview and feeling confident in that I have a really strong personal brand. I belong here, and I think they're going to want me, and I just need to show off. Yeah. What I have appropriately, so to speak.
Yeah, I think it's one kind of knowing kind of what you want to project. When you sit down with a recruiter or in an interview kind of situation, but really trying to highlight those pieces of your resume that do start kind of getting into your brand stack. And I think it kind of starts off with, and it's kind of a weird backwards way to do it, but at least it's how I do it and how I know it best, is I'll present you with, oh yeah, no, I used to be, an all-star cheerleading coach. But through that, I learned, project management. I learned optimization. In taking these really weird, kind of obscure things that you wouldn't think, or even when I was a mortician, it's when I learned about my love of procurement, inventory optimization, managing expiry dates, just-in-time delivery, all of that stuff. Again, when I just say, oh, I was a mortician, funeral director, embalmer, people think of, okay, the funerals, the actual embalming, but they don't think of any of the other stuff. So if you're able to highlight, and generally they go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that all makes sense, is being able to kind of present that kind of interesting, unique story, and then taking it and pulling it apart piece by piece with the pieces you want to present that show, and here are all the unique, interesting skill sets that I learned and I honed and I discovered doing this.
They're transferable skills and experiences in my frameworks. So okay, so the framework it's the 4 pillars of your analytics brand. So I would say number 1, business acumen. Number 2, analytics hard skills, and that's by design. You should know the business more than you should know the skills, because I think a lot of people optimize on hard skills over their business acumen, and then they end up spending 200 hours on a project that improves efficiency by 0.000001%, and then it's so business acumen, analytics hard skills, personal branding, so how to kind of package it all up, and then the 4th is soft skills, or your people skills.
Yeah.
So Cole, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
What transferable skills do you think you could pull out of your military experience?
Very I could say definitely personnel management.
Oh, that's huge. I didn't know you managed people.
That's that's massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're already a manager.
Yeah.
See, you're feeling I don't know. I guess that feels clunky or awkward to say.
Yeah. I'd say I did a lot of I spent a lot of time, communicating with different groups of people who had very different jobs and tasks, like coordination. I'd say coordinating and planning later in my later years, like in the Army, it took a lot coordinating with like supply to make sure we had food, water, ammunition, fuel for the trucks, batteries for the radios, and like each one of those groups is a different. Like you got to coordinate with the motor pool to make sure the trucks work.
You're speaking Danny's language here. Look at that
with
smile.
the medical battalion to make sure you have enough medics and medical supplies, and make sure you've coordinated with the air forces to make sure you have helicopters. If someone gets injured, you can get medevac, and setting up radio frequencies, but definitely that trying to juggle all that is probably.
Wait, can I interrupt you? I think I have like a way you could phrase this. And maybe this is going to be like over the top, but you could say, I have experience in one of the world's strongest supply chains. Like something along those lines of saying like, and then break it down specifically. Like, oh, we had to get ammunition. We had to get medicine. We had to, I mean, that's Cole, you've already got like, I mean, that's business acumen that you've got right there.
Yeah.
Exactly. But the other thing I think also, and I could kind of hear your timidness. No, man, you need to be on that. That's huge. You have cross-functional communication down pat. Talk about one of the biggest nightmares you deal in big corporations is you have a lot of specialized functionalities. So like in my current role right now, I'm talking to a lot of project managers. I'm talking to a lot of internal stakeholders, BIEs, and then you're also talking to the supply chain folks and the retail management folks on the ground. And you have to pretty much communicate across all these lines in a common language that everybody understands. And I think it doesn't take anybody to really realize that a data scientist and then somebody who's doing supply chain on the ground are not going to speak the same language. And they might even be talking about the same thing and fighting with each other until you realize you're fighting and saying the exact same thing.
Yeah, the acronyms are just
so being able to like clearly and concisely be able to communicate amongst people in different functionalities is massive when it comes to business. Is because you've got to be able to talk to the your low, I don't want to call them low end. They're not low end people. They are amazing people. Your entry level people on the ground, definitely. All the way up to your senior VPs and then CEOs of other companies. I've had the opportunity to sit down and have dinner and drinks with several CEOs of, large toy companies when I worked in toys. But then would the very next day have to go talk to find folks down in the fulfillment centers and be able to almost do a communication of what that meeting meant to what we needed to actually happen with these products and the distribution. And so kind of being able to be that kind of intermediator, that translator, that being able to speak all those kind of different functional languages it's massive.
I'm curious, Danny, do you code switch in those situations? Do you know what that means?
What do you mean?
Code switch is like when you kind of like you change up your vernacular or your like tone. Is it like more casual with the people in the warehouse versus the CEOs? It's like much more acronym heavy, like KPIs and that kind of stuff.
Yes and no. Just again, you have to speak the language that they know. Is because what business speak is in our warehouses versus what business speak is when you're sitting and talking to vendors is they're almost two different languages that you're using. You're using different words. So you've got to be able to take all that information and then distill it and then be able to communicate it in a way that is going to be best to understand. Because if you start using acronyms or certain vernacular with either FC associates or even CEOs, things can be missed in translation. So also knowing your audience, being able to speak to that audience and having experience talking to different audiences and being able to code switch like that on the fly to be able to get effective communication is a massive soft skill that you should definitely lean very heavy into.
All right, cool. I'm going to run you through the four pillars that I've laid out. So number one, you've got supply chain experience. with a massive supply chain that has like a diverse parts. I mean, you've got things in spades to talk about there. We're about to hop in over to Tableau. So you have, and this is another thing that I want to ask you, Danny, is what was your tool stack starting out? It sounds like with BE, did you just start in Excel or did you have other?
Yeah, just started in Excel.
So, okay, awesome. So moving on to the point two, the analytics hard skills, by the end of this class, you're going to know Power BI, Tableau, and Excel. Then talking about the personal brand, you're going to have a portfolio in Tableau. And then those soft skills, I mean, I didn't know with how this conversation was going to go, but Danny, you just like pulled that out of, how did you phrase it? Talking across different.
Oh, cross-functional communication.
Cross-functional. Cole, write that down. That needs to be in your resume. That needs to be in your LinkedIn profile. So you got all 4 brand points right there. I mean, just from this one conversation.
Yeah.
You have any questions?
Yeah, you brought up you made me think of a good question about, I'm kind of in the stage where I need a mentor, and you were talking about how important it was to have one. Like, what do you look for in one, and also follow on? Does a mentor need to be someone specifically doing what you want to be doing, or does it not so much, just with someone with like quality experience and something?
Exactly. So I've had several mentors throughout my years. And much like friendships and stuff, sometimes you outgrow it. Like, I've got people who were my mentors that are just now colleagues and friends. Currently, I have 2 mentors. So I have a mentor for, they're both at Amazon. One is kind of my work-life balance mentor. She was my first manager here. She's worked for Amazon for 23 years, which is insanely unheard of. Because I've been here for 5.5 years and have been here longer than 94% of the company.
Wow.
And then I have a mentor that is in an area of the company that I would like to be in. So she's always kind of coaching me on the things that I need to do to kind of get to my next steps. Now, necessarily, is that needed for where you're at? No. My very first mentor, who I was telling you, who got me to grad school, was a lawyer. He had no real big idea on business, but he knew what that step was to go from working for a couple of years between your undergrad and going back to grad school, all the questions you needed to answer to go back to grad school, all of those things. So he didn't have the direct experience, but he had all the indirect experiences that are necessary. And and then also probably somebody you just really enjoy chatting with. The really important things about, and I was actually chatting with a gentleman from University of Washington here not too long ago, and it kind of made me laugh because we got on this exact same conversation. If you want a mentor, I hate drawing this comparison, but it's the best comparison that I have. It's kind of like dating a little bit. You've got to kind of go out there. You've got to put yourself out there. You've got to talk to these people. Nobody is going to offer, like, this guy had me so on the line. All he had to do was be like, hey man, will you be my mentor? And I would have easily said yes. I'm not going to offer myself up to people. You have to you've got to take that step to ask, hey, would you mind if, we had a mentor-mentee relationship? But then the very next step to that is, and this is what my kind of expectations would be out of it. Like when I presented with my current mentor, I'm like, hey, would you mind being my mentor? Really all I need at this point is guidance on X, Y, and Z. And, maybe a hour-long catch-up once a month or once every other month. For us, it was every month, and now it's once a quarter. But again, what the expectations there were lined out so she could appropriately say yes or no. Because again, anybody who you would really want as a mentor is going to be busy. They're going to have a lot of things going on. And so very clearly stating what your objectives are and what the time commitment that you are asking from them is going to be key. but also tapping into the fact that people who are in these higher levels, and even like where I'm at, we get excited helping people. Like when I got somebody hired here right when we had our last conversation. It was actually the role that I wanted John David for. But when I was able to pull another person in, I was elated. And I had worked with this girl for probably 4 weeks ahead of time to get her ready for interviews, get her ready for all the things that she needed to do. So like don't think that just by asking somebody to be your mentor, that you're the only one getting any benefit, because even your mentor is getting a benefit from having you as a mentee. But again, it's just going to be really clearly and concisely outlining what your expectations of that relationship are going to be.
All right, so I want to expand upon your dating metaphor because it's a little risque, but I think it's excellent.
It is.
In that, well, I think that because nobody wants to date somebody who like can't get a date. Like it's like just like you want to signal to your potential mentor that you are going places. So like you're busy. I think that a lot of people in positions of power are actively searching for people to kind of, it's almost like a legacy move. Like they want to bestow their wisdom because especially if they're kind of like headed towards the end of their career. I mean, I see this with one of my friends, like his grandfather has a multi-million-dollar marketing agency and it's like, it skipped a generation as his dad isn't in that position, but it's like, he wants to give that knowledge. And I think that's intrinsically that just to kind of think about it from their perspective, but you need to signal like, okay, Danny, this guy that you would love to have, or you did mentor, right? The one that
he did not, because he asked me about like pretty much we lined it all the way up, and I'm like, you just got to be bold, you got to ask that person, and then just stop talking to me.
But what made you want to mentor him? I guess
is because
getting at.
So what made me want to mentor him is one. I saw a lot of and I think that's where I get a soft spot. I see a lot of myself in some of these people that especially like this gentleman, he was a junior at University of Washington, was struggling with his current classes. He was wondering if he should change majors, what he should do with his life, all of that. I'm like, I know exactly that. I was pre-med in my freshman year, had a 1.8 GPA after that, discovered econ and went absolutely bananas and launched my career. I'm like, I've been there. And this is kind of what I was going to come back to as to why people love to be mentors, is because it's our way of paying that debt back. Mm-hmm. Because there are very few of us that have gotten to this point without anybody. Like I could list you off probably 15 names right now of people, if they were not in my life at those exact key moments, I would not be where I'm at today. And so what I now do is I always have that in the back of my mind. It's like this perpetual debt that exists that I'm like, okay, if I ever see anybody in any of these exact situations that I once was in, I want to help them out. I know how to get them out. I know all the ways that I went. I know all the mistakes I made. I know all the successes I had. Like it's an invigorating way to pay it forward, to pay it back, kind of as an homage to all the people who sacrifice a little bit of their time to help me out when I needed it.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic.
Yeah.
You got any more questions, or do you want to jump into the Tableau review?
Just the last one, I would say if you could go back and make any different choices you wanted to, would you change anything?
Oh, that one's a hard one because I was actually having this conversation just 2 days ago. Yes and no.
I planted that question. the YouTube algorithm was that they love that title.
Yeah,
because it's very provocative.
It is. A piece of me says no is because I think my entire journey has made me who I am. It's made me resilient. It's given me crazy experiences that no other working professionals really I ever know have any background like mine. I talk about my background and people's eyes light up as kind of like, who the hell are you and how the hell did you get here? And I kind of get invigorated by that. But I would say the one thing that I would have done earlier, one, I would have gotten a mentor much earlier. And two, I would have figured out, I would have worked on my networking skills a lot earlier, because I didn't fully understand, one, the benefit of networking and how much that could really propel you in your career, or even just guidance of what to do, what best to do. And I don't think I really started appropriately networking until I was in grad school, and I was 28 already.
Danny, what does that look like? What does appropriately networking look like?
So appropriately networking is being able to put yourself into positions to have conversations with people that you want to have conversations with. The one thing that I don't think I did as well in my undergrad, I did much better during my grad school years, is leaning into the fact that you're a student. If you're a student right now, lean so hard into that when you talk to people. I mean, I field cold calls from people who are like, hey, listen, I don't know you. I found you on LinkedIn, or I found you through the alumni network at University of Washington or at Wake Forest. You're kind of doing something interesting. I would like to know something about it. The nice thing about being a student is I know you're not really going to ask me for things. And I think I even told John David the last time we were on here, my number one pet peeve is when somebody reaches out to me and instantly asks for a job. If you're just reaching out to ask for the shiny thing that you want, you're not going to get a lot of reception. But if you're a student, exactly. But if you're a student, I know instantly that's not going to happen. I know that you're trying to learn. And again, all of us that are in these positions love people who want to learn, who are hungry for knowledge, who want to do all this stuff. And so you will find that working professionals have a lot more time for people who say, hey, I'm a student at University of X and X or College X and X. And so really leaning into the fact that I was a student as a way to talk to random strangers about what they were doing and start developing relationships with them through that mechanism.
So I've got another take on networking. And I think the strongest, like the most powerful networking I've ever done was I joined the board at Trial Local First, which is a local nonprofit. And it's kind of a hack in that people who are kind of in powerful positions or influential like to get into philanthropy. So I was on the board and I ended up running the finance committee. I got to manage the former CFO of Wrangler Jeans. Like he wanted to come in, volunteer with this organization. And then I got to work with him. I mean, that was such a cool experience because he was very, very informal. Hilarious guy, like very, very negative, like very direct, but also funny. Like he would be abrasive if you weren't so funny. Yeah. But we would go and grab a beer and talk about the finance of this nonprofit. I mean, we would go and just like once a month go grab a beer, and it was kind of like almost a hybrid of mentorship and just getting to collaborate. I think that is a missed opportunity of going and doing something like that has civic good or some type of nonprofit where you get to work on something with someone. I think that is because I think a lot of networking events are somewhat awkward. Like it is kind of translate like, here's my business card, take mine, to where you're actually actively doing something. It's also an opportunity for you to bond with someone too, I think.
Yeah, it very much is. But again, and I think I've even kind of told you, and I've indirectly of even with my limited interactions with Hunter, whenever Hunter wants to come work for Amazon, he just gives me a call. I love that kid. He's a smart kid.
So I don't know if I'm going to let go of him because he is managing $1 billion. We just landed $1 billion client and he is managing it.
Woo!
I've been hands off. Like I just got the first billing for them. And I don't know. He may grow the consulting arm of Silvertown. He's only a junior and he's already doing it.
He and that's the thing is that's a fun part about also doing this kind of stuff for me is I get to see what some of the up and coming talent is like, and then really kind of try to be like, hey, come on, Hunter. But I do.
So he's had Sherwin Williams reach out. He's had Gardner has just reached out to him about an internship. And he's a junior. I mean, it's
he's a sharp kid.
I think also too, being on the podcast, he gets amplified. I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
that's like not only does it have a solid personal brand, but then it's getting like there's a distribution aspect of thousands of people are getting to watch him on the podcast. Which, you know, cool. I hope this rubs off on you some, and you get some internship opportunities. All right. Speaking of that and personal branding.
Hey,
Cole,
John David, can you send this to me real quick? Like via either LinkedIn or whatnot?
Yeah. All right, Cole, while I'm sending that to him, do you want to walk through the use case?
Yes.
Just sent it through LinkedIn.
Thank you, boss.
We've got our marketing costs and sales from Amazon and Facebook.
It's also very appropriate for Danny.
I believe the second quarter. We've got, so basically laying everything out. We've got Amazon on the left, Facebook on the right. Top is our sales earnings. In the red bars is the spending of each. And I've got it to where I've shown on which days we've spent specific amounts. And then overall, over top of it, we've got how our earnings coincided with the days of spending for each. And we've got, and both the scales are the same so that you kind of see how they compare together, and how which one, you know, kind of makes more or costs more. And this is just for like a 3-month period.
So Cole, what's your recommendation? What should we do?
Well, I'm liking the Facebook sales for sure.
There you go.
That looks like a home run to me. That's like a 400%.
400%, yeah.
Yeah.
Versus a little under 200%.
Yeah.
I mean, these are excellent return on investments.
And the Facebook, it really it was like pretty much an all-star from the beginning. Like the Amazon surprisingly took a little longer to start to get profitable, and you can see like there's a good bit of spending there in the beginning, but the Facebook really did quite well. I mean, they both are successful, but that one really knocked it out of the park.
All right, so Cole, so Danny, to give you context, we've gone through like multiple case studies in class, but I also gave the students an option to take my online learning, the courses on my online learning platform. And this is this is actually based off of the capstone course from my cohort for last year. This is one of their projects.
Yeah, this is like all completely basically like what the product you get from taking the course. And it wasn't like, it was a short to the point course, and it just gives you the information and lets you go with it. And then after the course, you know, it prompts you to customize it as, you know, as best you can, and then put it on LinkedIn, like on your profile, to show like it gives everyone the same bit of information, and then shows what everyone does with it on their own, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
So Cole, I've got a question for you. The Facebook stuff makes no sense to me. I'm totally like playing a character here right now.
Yeah.
What's going on with how can we have Facebook sales but there's no ad spend? What could be going on in that situation?
With no ad spend? I'd say that's residual, maybe from an expenditure you already made. It's still out there and then still generating revenue from something you already did, instead of constantly having to boost it from the Amazon side of things.
Well, okay, that's a potential theory, but what's the difference between Facebook and Amazon as a platform?
Well, Facebook tries to be a hybrid, but they're mostly just, you know, social media, socializing with, you know, the market on the side, the groups on the side. And then Amazon is a online business that is producing products or facilitating the selling of products. So
Danny,
they do have different missions.
as a representative from Amazon, is that a fair description of Amazon?
Can be.
What?
I wasn't prepared to explain Amazon's mission.
Well, I'm totally putting you on the spot here to kind of somewhat mimic an interview situation. But Cole, what I was getting at is that Facebook is a social media and a sales platform. So those sales are probably coming from social media posts, which we get into that in like chapter 4 of the case study course, which I guess you haven't gotten to that yet.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, you got 2 weeks before you're like this, Danny. This is just a rough draft. He's got 2 weeks to get like a final version in. But Danny, you've been awfully quiet. What's your initial take on this?
So a couple of things. So one, I guess, Cole, what is if you were going to get one thing that you wanted a business leader to look at, what's the one piece of information you're trying to convey with this?
I would say the bottom line, like, is it a good idea to spend for these sales?
Okay. And I guess where, and this is kind of rhetorical, so I apologize, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot. Where is this drawing my eye to? Because again, the one thing you've got to think a lot of times when you deal with high up leadership, they're extremely, extremely busy. They will spend 20 seconds looking at this. And in 20 seconds, is it easy for me to say what my ROI is, where I should go, and what I can expect per dollar of return that I will do in either one of those in our preferred bucket or our preferred sales channel?
Not a good like projection of like really where we should go with it and like what's going to happen.
Exactly. And the one thing I would be extremely cautious. So I see where you have Amazon spending and Facebook spending. You have them both on a red bar. But then you have your measure also in red for Amazon, according to what you have in the upper right-hand corner here. It could get very confusing, but also understanding that red generally means bad.
Yeah.
So it makes us both look like they're both behind. And I also don't know if there's a functionality, and this is one of the things that I actually learned when I worked at BE, is visual management. How can you make this more visual that a leader can take a quick look at this and within 20 seconds know everything there is to know? But if they want to know more details, they can get in there. One of the things you can do is with your Facebook spending bar and your Amazon spending bar, have them equivalent to what would be, so almost an adjustable bar. So you'll show that, oh, look, this 4.5K that we've spent smaller bar versus Amazon, which is bigger. And then Amazon sales, which is only, 12.5, is smaller than the 16K. And then even just as silly as it sounds, having your average ROI number in percentages just underneath them. That way you easily look at it and go, oh, shoot, okay, I'm only getting about 1.5x off of my Amazon spending, but I'm getting 4x off Facebook. Boom, I already know it. All right, here's some of the supporting details if I've got questions. But within 10 seconds, I know everything I need to know and can go make further decisions.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, cool. What would you say is the most important KPI in this case study?
I would say I guess the spend. I mean, if you could do it, the spending, the percentage, like what he said, of each, Amazon and Facebook.
I would say it's the return on investment. So like, what is that ratio of? Yeah. So the ratio of sales versus spending. So like if I put $1 in, would I get $2 back more likely from a Facebook ad or an Amazon ad? So that's kind of that. I would have that front and center. And as you get deeper into this course, I'm going to show you how to create that return on investment calculation. So that I think should be the number.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah. That's what I is missing the most of is the bottom line. Which one is?
Right. Because Danny brings up a great point of these executives have 3 seconds to look at this sometimes. And they're just going to say, are we above or below our quota? And you need to make sure that it's at just a glance. Think about it like when you're driving your car, you're not staring at your dashboard and like having to like sift through tons and tons of information to figure out, am I going above or below the speed limit, for example?
Yeah. I think that in Cole, this, like, again, it looks good. It just needs some of the tweaking. The number one thing you can always ask yourself when you do this is think of somebody else looking at this and ask, why do they care? Mm-hmm. And when you answer, okay, why do they care? Or what should they care about? You put that as prominent as you can in there. The other thing is there's some like easy stuff to fix that I've learned over a lot of trial and error, and a lot more error than trial. Because when you first stated this to me is that you said, oh, we've put everything in similar scales between the Facebook and Amazon. First two things that I notice is one, your product sales on the side, your numbers are off kilter. So 1,800 is your top on Facebook, and it's a little over $2,000 on Amazon.
Yeah,
but then also you have them labeled differently, even if the data comes in different or is labeled different from what you're bringing in. Making sure those match, because the very next question I would ask if I was looking at this is, okay, what's the difference between gross sales and ordered product sales? Mm-hmm. And that is, I'm going to go ahead and say that is not what you want their eyes drawn to. And so making sure you have some of these little details really buttoned up will keep them on focus on the things that you want to convey, rather than them asking silly questions of, oh, why is the scaling different? Why are the labels different? And kind of really, that's where you've got to get into the kind of detail and make sure your details are done well. The best fine details in any dashboard are the ones that no one ever sees or pays attention to.
Right. I mean, so that point kind of relates back to that cross-functional communication. So the lingo within the Facebook data pool is ordered product sales. When you pull the sales data from Amazon, it says gross sales. So like just understanding that those two data points are the same, they're just coming out of different databases that's, as an analyst, knowing that and being kind of like almost like the gatekeeper of that information. I mean, number one, it gives you job security, because like if they lose you, I mean, even if you have it like all written down somewhere, someone's going to have to take time to learn that. But also it helps you more effectively communicate. Like Danny was just saying.
Yep.
All right. I've also got another point. I would love to see this interactive. So either, because I think that is one of the big value props of Tableau, is how easy it is for the end user. So essentially what you're doing is you're doing information design. So like you need to figure out, all right, what are the things they want to pull out of this, and then create some user interface so that the end user can just quickly click a button or toggle or deselect or select to get exactly what they want. And that gets back to that ad hoc versus systems thinking approach. So like you're creating a system where they, instead of having to email you 4 or 5 different times for specific data points, you empathetically think about their like worldview and what's important to them, and then design the dashboard, take an iterative approach, kind of take multiple like stabs at it until you have a dashboard it's an infrastructure instead of just, this is a one-time report that's static. Yeah. Cole, does that make any sense? I feel like that's
definitely want one that is fluid, that you can keep using, and not just something that, you put this time into and then it's useless like the next week because of updated information.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, it's that extra R in the STAR method that Danny invented.
Yeah.
I did not invent that. I will not take credit for that.
We have such a visionary on our podcast. Well, I mean, this is a third draft, so I mean, it's coming along like this. I can see you taking notes. I mean, we got 2 more weeks before you guys are submitting these. So on Thursday, I can take a look at this and give you some even more.
Yeah, I definitely want to figure out how to make it interactive with that. That's what I'm missing skill wise.
Yeah, well, I would say the ROI and interactivity, and I think that this will be an A versus a portfolio piece for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And then I don't know if it goes in there, but also a good way to almost compare and contrast. So if I look at, and I'll pick February 23rd out because it's my birthday, looking at the differences between February 23rd of 2020 versus Amazon versus Facebook, you see it dips in Facebook and spikes at Amazon, which kind of makes me even giggle further. But again, I have to sit and I have to highlight over both of them and flip back and forth rather than almost having a way that you can either having them blended as one table with the bar charts right next to each other with the 2 different lines to be able to quickly contrast of on this exact date, here are the different things rather than having to go back and forth. Because again, there's a lot of good information here. It just, as somebody going through this, it would take me probably at least 5 to 10 minutes to figure everything out before I could effectively use this.
Yeah. That's an interesting point. Yeah, I don't know why. Did you say February 3rd or 23rd?
23rd.
Okay, I heard 3rd. I was like, wait, is that on here? Yeah, so that's an interesting point. I don't know. And see, this is the kind of thing that facilitates the conversation that you can then use for that iterative feedback. So so it could be as simple as like, oh, these are side by side. Let's stack them on top of each other. So then the dates line up for the sales. Because right now we're seeing the volumes very clearly. Like we can see that, all right, this peaks here, and this is not nearly as high as that. So, I mean, it's whatever is being prioritized from a visualization standpoint. Danny, that's a really interesting point.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. It's also not coming. It's not all coming from me too, which I like.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. I feel like I was a little worried it was going to be like the same conversation, but we've got a completely new use case. We've got a completely different student here. And it's just like, maybe we have like a system we can just repeat.
Well, I was about to say, you know me, I've got a weird enough background, enough stories. I think I could sit here and do this several times before I start talking about the same stuff over and over again.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's funny because I've done like 120 podcast episodes. You think I would have run out of things to say at this point? But just like more things. Well, what's weird is that people are now starting to reach out to me about coming on, and they're like from pretty prominent positions, which I don't know. I guess there's just no one else doing this right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's a couple other podcasts, but like most of them are not. They're not doing it with this angle where it's like I have you, Danny, the expert, and I have you, Cole, the student, and it's like I'm almost stepping to the background and just trying to facilitate your just wealth of knowledge, and Cole, you're just like eating it all up. Like it's really cool. I like it.
You are like the waiter of information right now.
I'm a steward. That's a data steward. It's not even a data steward. It's like an information steward. Like I'm just distilling things down. But awesome. Well, I think we're about running out of time. Danny, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure
Anytime.
to catch up with you.
Oh yeah, no man, it's always a pleasure to come on.
Yeah, thank you for all the information. I definitely got a lot of good stuff from that.
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, feel free to reach out if you ever need anything else, man.
Appreciate it.
You're brave today, Cole. Good job on getting this
Thank you.
portfolio. And I feel bad. We kind of neglected the live chat, but thanks everyone for tuning in live. We'll see you guys actually on Friday. I'm going to be talking to a NYU professor, so that'll be interesting. All right, see you guys.
Thank you.